Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with our series, Dumbfounding Definitions, Dizzying Distinctions, and Diabolical Doctrines, a series sorting through some of the jargon of philosophy. In this video, we're going to be continuing our mini-series analyzing African philosophy, looking at some of the theories and positions that exist in African, particularly sub-Saharan African philosophy. In this video, we're looking at what is Yoruba Epistemology. So, we now move from southern Africa to West Africa. The Yoruba people live primarily in Nigeria, but are also found in Benin, Ghana, and other West African countries such as Togo and Sierra Leone. While we lack written philosophy from the Yoruba, authors Helen and Sodipo have worked with the traditional keepers of ideas passed down through oral traditions to document philosophical ideas within the tradition of ethnophilosophy. If you are curious about what ethnophilosophy is and how it's philosophically justified, check out my previous video on what is ethnophilosophy. The focus of this video is on Yoruba epistemology, which challenges one of the central conceits of Western epistemology going back to Plato, that knowledge is defined as justified true belief. Specifically, it's going to take issue with the idea of justification being important for knowledge. And for the Yoruba, justification is actually going to be a far weaker source of knowledge than other kinds, as we'll see. This claim, which has only really been challenged by Gettier since Plato, is deeply entrenched in Western philosophy, as much of epistemology is built on top of it. Therefore, it's just the kind of claim that a non-Western philosophy is well positioned to challenge, as the non-Western philosophy doesn't have that same history going back to a particular idea. They're able to look at it from a different perspective and not be kind of bogged down by all the baggage. So, instead of lumping knowledge into a single category, Yoruba epistemology can be described as splitting it into several categories with stronger and weaker justification. The first category is known as imo, the verb form of which is mo. So, first off, apologies if I mispronounce anything. Don't worry, I mispronounce European things far more often, so it's no slight on anyone. So you would compare mo to know something. So you could mo something, and imo to knowledge. So you would have imo if you mo something. So in order to have mo, you must have first-hand experience. So that's generally some sense experience of something. So seeing something, feeling something, smelling something, touching something, those kinds of things give you mo. Mo is the strongest kind of knowledge. It's a separate category from the next level of knowledge that we're going to look at in a second. There's an assumption that sense experience is inherently connected to truth, what is true, and that this kind of knowledge has a much closer connection to truth than other types of knowledge or other separate categories of things that we're going to talk about in a sec. So something like seeing a dog, smelling a flower, or feeling sandpaper would classify as emo. You do not need to justify them. And here's the key kind of difference between this and Western philosophy. For Western philosophers, knowledge must be true, it must be believed, and it must be justified. For Yoruba epistemology, something that is mo doesn't need justification. You see it, you feel it, you experience it. And there's some way in which you can't deny it. You can't say that this is something that is false, or you can't misunderstand it. You can't not see what's there. So you don't need to justify things that you mo or things that you experience, at least for yourself, internally. To other people, you may need to justify it because for them, it would be igbagbo, which we'll look at right now. So the next step of the typology of knowledge is known as igbagbo, information that you do not have direct experience of. There are two levels of igbagbo: information that can be verified and information that can only be justified. The first being seese and the second being alaya. If you speak Yoruba, please correct me in the comments on my pronunciation of things. Verifiable information is information that you could mo but do not, while justification is an argument or explanation given for something that you cannot mo. So someone comes to you and they tell you that something is true, that they mo something, that they saw or experienced that thing. Now, if you could go and test it, so for you, if you understand them and believe them, that would be igbagbo, something that you also know, but in a very importantly different sense. Now, within your igbagbo, if you could go and check on that thing yourself, at least in principle, it could in principle be made mo for you. You could mo it. Then it would be seese. While if it could only be explained or justified and you couldn't check it for yourself, it would be alaya. And for the Yoruba, that ability to be verified or justified with your own experience is a stronger type of knowledge, is a stronger type of igbagbo than something that can only be justified or explained through an argument. So, for example, if you see an eagle yourself, that would be imo. You would mo it. Hearing from someone else that an eagle lives in a tree would be seese, assuming you could check on whether or not an eagle did live there and mo it yourself. But being told that an eagle flew past an hour ago would be alaya, the weakest type of knowledge, as you would not be able to mo it, since you could not go and gain sense experience of it yourself. You would have to be given an argument for it. You would have to be given the claim that, well, look, here's some eagle droppings here, and look at this feather that I found, and these kinds of things. You would have to be provided some justification for it. Whereas the other two, you don't need justification. You don't need justification for what your eyes can see. And if you can go and check on something yourself, why would you justify it when you can go and have that first-person sense experience, which is itself in some way undoubtable? So within Yoruba epistemology, you cannot deny or misunderstand something that you mo. That's what makes it importantly different from igbagbo. There's not a separate step of understanding or assent to a proposition about something that you can see or experience. You can't deny the things that are in front of your own face. You can't deny your senses, but you may deny or mistake something that someone tells you. You can either understand what they say and deny that it's true, or misunderstand what they say, and so either deny or accept that it's true, but be understanding something incorrectly, and therefore not really having knowledge. At that point, it doesn't rise to the level of igbagbo. Now note, unlike knowledge, while mo may have a strong connection to truth, igbagbo does not, because you may understand and believe someone telling you something, but it could be not true. And igbagbo has this sense of the ability to not be perfectly connected with truth in the same way that mo is. And while some types of igbagbo can go out and be justified through the use of mo, that doesn't mean that they are inherently or must be true in the same way that a Western conception of knowledge must be true to be known. An argument for the distinction between mo and igbagbo might go something as follows. Premise 1, people are incapable of doubting or misunderstanding something that they experience themselves, and those things are importantly connected to truth, if not always true. People are capable of doubting or misunderstanding something that they are told via testimony, or that is explained to them, or that is justified to them through an argument, and those things may not be connected to that basic truth in the same way. Therefore, there's an important difference between beliefs and knowledge formed on the basis of experience and on the basis of testimony or argument. The former category being mo, The second category being igbagbo. Now, unlike many Western epistemologies, which take mathematical or logical truths as the undoubtable truths to build a foundation out of, or some deep, necessary truth that they try to construct a la Descartes, Yoruba epistemology builds out of first-person experience as the basic, undeniable truth. This is why justification is central to the Western definition, because your basic, deep truths, your necessary a priori truths are only known through justification, not through sense experience. But it only arrives at the weakest level of Yoruba epistemology because the undeniable things are the things that you see with your eyes or experience through your senses, while justification is the kind of thing that can be twisted around and misunderstood or denied. While the Western dogmatist might take a logical truth justified by argument as undoubtable, but sense experience as suspect, a Yoruba dogmatist would claim exactly the opposite. As a philosophical skeptic, I'm all for doubting the basic definition of knowledge, and I would argue that the existence of kind of Yoruba epistemology and this very different conception of what the basic kind of knowledge or kind of information that is justified is a good case for doubting or being skeptical of the traditional Western dogmatist claim that it's impossible to doubt the truths of logic but easy to doubt the truths of experience. But my concern is that there are ways that we could misunderstand what we see or deny our senses. Optical illusions are an example of a situation where you might misunderstand what you see, and if you're aware that something is an optical illusion, you may not believe what you see or what you experience. Now, the Yoruba dogmatist might come back and say that these are strange cases and are very uncommon in the real world. The skeptic might say either, well, you wouldn't know if they were uncommon if they were everywhere and you just haven't ever realized that they're all there, or go a step farther and talk about things like dreams. So dreams may make us concerned that our senses are betraying us. You don't know that you're not dreaming right now, necessarily. And in your dream, you're sensing things and experiencing things. And so you may be mistaken about what you are sensing or experiencing. And in that way, there's a disconnect between what you seem to know and what is true. And there's a way in which those kinds of things are in some way disconnected from reality despite being sensed and experienced. If you think you might be dreaming right now, then you might fail to assent to what you are experiencing at the time. And so it kind of breaks apart this necessary connection between things that you experience through your senses and things that you believe or assent to. Both of these examples pose a problem for the status of Mo as more solid than igbagbo, because they show that you both can not necessarily understand what you're sensing or experiencing, and that you may deny or not assent to or not agree with the things that you're sensing or experiencing. This doesn't mean that the distinction cannot be made, simply that the existing ranking of it in comparison to igbagbo may be problematic, and that some of the ideas of the way that that distinction is parsed may not perfectly map onto our reality. From the other direction of the dogmatist, we might think that logical truths, which folks believe solely due to justification and explanation, have never actually experienced, are in some way more justified because they're logically necessary or can be known without experience. The dogmatist would argue, or might argue, something along the lines of, while it might be false that I think I see a pencil in front of me because it's actually an optical illusion or a projection of a pencil, or I'm really sleeping, 2 + 2 = 4, no matter if I see it or not, no matter if I'm dreaming or not, and no matter whether my senses have been tricked. The skeptic, of course, would come back that even your reason can be tricked, which is arguably an argument from the side of Yoruba epistemology that would say that your senses are more trustable than things like justification or explanation. These dogmatists might agree to the distinction between kind of testimony or explanation and first-person experience, but would classify things justified by logic as more reliable than first-person experience. However, for the skeptic, neither first-person experience nor logical truths stand up to the sufficient foundations for knowledge. The skeptic doubts the claims of Yoruba epistemology because they find testimony, justification, and first-person experience all insufficient to provide knowledge. So neither mo nor igbagbo is sufficient to give you knowledge. They're not perfectly connected to truth in the way that the Yoruba epistemologist would make us think that mo is necessarily connected to the reality of the world. Arguing about what represents a stronger or weaker claim to knowledge is not important if none of them have been shown to be knowledge in the first place. So while this might pose some interesting objections to the dogmatist that relies too much on justification instead of sense experience, the skeptic is unconvinced. In fact, the very existence of these differing perspectives on what is a stronger type of knowledge is evidence that neither mo or necessary truths are undoubtable or self-justified, as the foundationalist might have us believe in the Western tradition, that these kind of necessary truths or things that are true through logical justification must be true and can't be doubted. The Yoruba might say those are exactly the kind of things you can doubt, whereas your sense experience is something that you can't, whereas the Western epistemologist through foundationalism might say, no, those are the kinds of things that you should doubt. The fact that they disagree on that at least gives us evidence that these things aren't just self-justified on their face, that it's in fact perhaps your culture or your previous philosophical notions and understandings that makes you think that they're self-justified or that they're undoubtable, as there's evidence that other cultures do in fact doubt them. So that was Yoruba epistemology. Leave your comments down below. Do you think that Yoruba epistemology or kind of the traditional Western foundationalism is more convincing for what's a stronger version of knowledge, either sense experience or things that are justified? Or are you a skeptic like me and think that neither are? Next up, we'll be taking a look at Akan philosophical psychology, then Bantu philosophy, Ethiopian philosophy, Pan-Africanism, and that'll finish up the series. Watch this video and more here at Carneades.org, and stay skeptical, everybody.